Hey, I'm Aya Miller, Editor-in-Chief at the Western Herald, and right now we're participating in a fundraiser called College Media Madness. So we wanted to give you guys an inside look into what we do over at the Western Herald. So I'll be sitting down with all of the members of our editorial board, discussing with them what they like about the Herald and why it's important to them. So today we have Chloe Miller, our news editor. So Chloe, do you want to start with who you are, just a brief little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm the news editor. I'm also a senior this year at Western Michigan University. And so I want to just ramble some fun facts about myself, I guess.
Yeah, go for it.
And say my sister has a really big dog, a St. Bernard named Moose, who is my nephew, and I love him a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I also have a human niece and then also a human nephew who are very dear to me also. So.
Yes, and very, very adorable.
They are.
Indeed. Yeah, so Chloe, why don't you tell me kind of like when you started at the Herald? I wasn't here then, so get me caught up on what that was like.
Yeah, so I started at the Herald my sophomore year, and at first, I just switched to a journalism major also at the end of my freshman year, and I wasn't considering at all actually joining the Herald.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until I ran into, his name was Robert, and he was an old sports reporter
Mm-hmm.
before he graduated also. He was in one of my English classes, and he kind of just dragged me here when he found out I was a journalism major, and he kind of shamed me for not being at the Herald, which kind of forced me to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since that, I was just kind of very intrigued by the whole organization and just very passionate about it as well. And I just, I thank him for forcing me to basically come here and then get introduced to everyone and then, write for us and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, and I'm very thankful for that. I have a lot of fun here, and yeah.
Yeah, so how did your time at Western kind of change after you joined the Herald?
Yeah, so I think before I was just very introverted, and I was just very, I basically just had my close circle of friends, and
Mm-hmm.
that was it. And since I joined the Herald, I basically just got introduced to basically just everyone at the university. I feel I feel like everyone can talk about this too, basically, probably, but I talked to so many different organizations. I talked to so many different, also faculty members too. I really didn't know the workings of how even Western Michigan University ran or who the people were that were just in charge of a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then after being in the Herald, you just kind of basically just learned everything, the ins and outs of the university and who to talk to about things and basically just everything going on.
Mm-hmm. Did kind of knowing all of that stuff about the inner workings of how the university functioned, did it make you feel more a part of the university community at all?
It did. It kind of, I guess, in a way I already said before, but it introduced me to a lot of people. And I actually, I felt people also knew who I was also, which is always a nice thing to have. And it just kind of helped me, I guess, bring me out of my shell and actually, start communicating with people and want to communicate with these people also,
Mm-hmm.
which was very helpful.
So that's really cool. So I remember when I started here, I walked in and then I obviously saw you over there and I was, another Miller, that's super awesome. And then it obviously seemed like you had a lot of experience under your belt and you kind of knew what you were doing, and then you were getting really comfortable as being a presence at the Herald and a presence on campus. So can you talk a little bit about that, how participating in the Herald kind of gave you more writing experience and kind of your journey to becoming news editor?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest here. I had no experience before the Herald, actually, just with journalism and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I went to the Herald, obviously I had journalism classes and stuff like that, but none of them actually put me into the field and actually had me reporting at one, a consistent level, and then two, at the level of the quality that needed to be done in a newspaper before. And so joining the Herald, that immediately put me, into the spot and then into actually reporting.
Mm-hmm.
And that, actually gaining that experience itself has probably just helped me improve much, like just so much as a writer. Because, you're taking basically just taking notes from a classroom and, just saying, you can learn AP style as much as you want. But if you're not actually, putting that into, what's the word I'm looking for, motion,
Mm-hmm.
then you're not learning anything. So I think the Herald kind of just helped contribute that to actually, forcing its reporters, not forcing, but just, that's not the right word I want to use, but just guiding its reporters to actually, going out there and reporting themselves and, taking lessons and making lessons on their own,
Mhm.
And that's just how they improve.
Yeah, awesome. So you touched on that consistency a little bit, and then I know you were on the parking beat for a long while, and I know you're done with that at this point because you're about to graduate. You're like, I get me as far away from parking as I possibly can be. So, and I actually have one of your parking stories right here. I think here it is right here. Can you talk a little bit about how that kind of like gave you some more So, working on those parking stories has been a big part of your time at the Western Herald. So, can you talk a little bit about, following that beat and having that consistency, how that was like?
Yeah, so first off, I just want to thank these stories because I always dedicate these stories to the reason to why I have a job here at the Herald. And I just think obviously beat reporters and such. I feel like that is such what's the word I'm looking here for? It's like an honorable thing in the sense that I think if you're producing the same content consistently about the same topic, I think that is first off a really big. I know from experience, it's a really important thing to do. But I think, with the beat reporting and then especially on parking, I think this was, as we, were talking about it, it was a really big, topic of conversation when I first started here. And no one else was really taking it, the stories on it because, it's basically, I'm going to compare it to meter duty. On the if you're working in law enforcement, everyone else wants the other stories, but parking was just kind of the boring thing I think to talk about. And I think it just kind of tells that little stories do have big impacts in kind of a way. I'm not answering your question. What was the question?
No, you are totally. I think that's a great point because I know I was a big theater person before I came to the Herald, and before I started doing newspaper in high school, I kind of went straight from theater to on newspaper. But there was always the saying that there are no small parts, only small actors, or something like that. And I feel like that kind of the same applies here. There are no small stories. I guess only small reporters. So how do you? So you obviously did it with the parking. How do you take something like a small story like that and then make it such a staple of the Herald? Because that was something we were so known for. I started and then people were like, oh, Chloe's on parking, she's doing a really good job with parking and stuff like that. How did you make that so big?
Well, I think it's also just finding things that one students are gonna be passionate about and making it so they're passionate about it. And when you talk to students and their biggest issue was parking, so it's more so just talking about the students about it and their opinions about it is how I'm going to kind of phrase it first. But, I talk to students and their issues are well, parking's literally miles away from where my buildings are. A pattern in a way to where I first started off, the first story was just talking to students about how they feel about parking and if they want parking. And then I found out there was an event that was typically that was just about, oh my goodness, sorry. There was an event that was just about parking on its own and also just the road. And the parking aspect was just a little portion of it. And no one actually cared about it. But I just went there, and I kind of, brought that little aspect that they were trying to make. It was literally, they had a bunch of boards across the room, and they had just one little section and one board just dedicated to parking. And I just kind of like brought that forward more so that people, I guess, just wouldn't be paying attention to. And I think that, I'm not answering your question again.
No, you are.
I think that, like things that people aren't paying attention to, or things that, might be glanced by just like a basic person just passing by the thing. That's something that I think is also going to be very impactful to just help people, become more aware of it and actually want to speak out on it, like to say, hey, that is a little bit messed up that we aren't getting more parking because the budget's there, or something like that. So I think that kind of was an influence. So yeah, talking to students about it and then actually bringing little things into focus helped a lot with it.
Oh, that's amazing. So you talked a little bit about, how it's important to get students' voices on those stories, and how that contributed to making the stories bigger. What role do you think Western Herald has on campus?
Yeah, so I think, we serve as the voice for the people, which is the number one thing. I think there's a lot going on campus to where the university or administrators may not be very much paying attention to what the needs of the students are. And I think we're a good source for that, especially, we're always reporting on stuff like, petitions and when there's protests and stuff like that. And if there's a issue going on campus, I think, we're typically the source to actually, make a reach out for that. I think we're a really big part of one of those steps. And then I think, we're also just like really good just for like informing students. Also just the general like Kalamazoo area also, I should just throw that out there too, of just things that are going on. Also, whether it's events, the CNC section too, events, things that are going on that are fun, and also, and things that they may need to be notified by. And I think, the communication aspect of that is probably like one of the most important things, I think, the Western Herald, but really any newspaper can do.
What do you think we can do in the future to get more engaged with the students, since such a large part of our purpose is serving the students?
Yeah, so I think that I feel like I've talked to you about like a lot of things that I want to start seeing more of, in which, social media is like the number one thing right now, that, a lot of all students use it, and, we have followers and stuff, and I would love to see more outreach on there. And I think, students can, I feel like that's like something that I think all news outlets really, not just even the Western Herald, can start using more, either in a casual way or in just a way to just bring more engagement and more people to actually come and engage with us.
So you're coming down to like the end of your time here at Western. I think first of all, I want to say like, what aspects of graduation are you excited for?
Yeah, so, well, first off, for speaking in the Herald sense, I'm very devastated and very sad to be leaving this. And say I had such a good time here. I made such good friends and such, so I'm really upset to be leaving. But, I think, just speaking in the Herald also says again that I'm really happy with, the legacy that, me and then also everyone else who is graduating too has left on this. And I'm hoping, these standards that we have set are going to be continued to be met after we graduate, because I think we did leave it in a very good position. And then, but, for me personally, I'm excited to graduate. Nothing against WMU or anything, but school is hard. School is very hard. And it's just very tiring. And I'm happy, just to be graduating, and also just to be continuing about just the rest of my life, and, pursuing a career in journalism right after I graduate, and, I'm just really excited for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. What so you talked about the standards a little bit. What standards do you have in mind for the people who kind of like take the role of news after you leave?
Yeah. I'm just hoping that, the quality of the content that we've been producing, over the last few years just continues to rise, especially with just like the content that we're producing, content that students are going to want to read, or content that's helpful for students, or I should actually just like the whole Kalamazoo area also, content that they just want to read and that will influence them in a way too. As I mentioned before, we just talked about the parking and all of that. I'm hoping someone picks up something like that on too. You can always do a parking story. I'm trying to pass it down right now. So. And I just hope that, they have the same energy also and the same aggressive attitude with it too. Don't take no for an answer. Don't, if someone's not answering your questions to what you need, then attacking that still. So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's such a good point about kind of like attacking the story and making sure you get what you need. And that takes a lot of, what is the word I'm looking for? You have to be, attentive, dedicated, and I guess aggressive in a way. So those are all things that can be applied to many areas, of course. What kind of skills did you learn being at the Western Herald that you can take on into your future career?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned before, but I was a very shy person before the Herald, and this kind of helped me to be more outgoing and more enthusiastic with things. And that's something I think, one of the biggest things that I'm going to be taking with me when I graduate and I'm in the future is just that more outgoing approach and more, a people person like the kind of thing. Because I think, it's always good to be very outgoing. And I think that, oh man, hold on. What was I going to say here? I just literally lost my train of thought. I think it's just like that outgoing approach, and then also just being a people person. And willingly to want to talk to people is something that I think I'm going to be taking from what I learned from the Herald into here or in the future.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And then just before we leave, we definitely, we have a lot of ways in which we can improve. How do you think kind of like building our budget and then finances would help with that?
So we have a lot of reporters. And we're basically just going up in content, and the only way to move is up. We don't want to go back down. So I think just by improving the budget and all of that, we are going to basically just keep producing the content that we want to produce, and then also bring in more reporters, hopefully, and hopefully get them producing the content that is going to help them be young reporters when they graduate too, and out there in the industry and stuff. And I think that's what our number one goal is here, at the Western Herald too, is to just get people ready for that and to, make good content that people want to read and, want to see also. So, by increase the budget, all that just goes up and continues to go up. So I think that's all we can hope for,
Yeah, I think that's amazing. That is definitely what I hope for in the coming years. Since I'm just a wee little sophomore, I have 2 years left in here, as Chloe loves to say whenever we're joking around. She's always like, you're a kid, just you little 19-year-old.
So embarrassing.
It is. Why am I not like 22 or 23 yet? Why doesn't time just move faster? But but Chloe, thank you so much for coming. I think you've provided some really valuable insights that everyone can kind of take going forward, and it's just so awesome to have your thoughts and your voice on video here for all of the people that come after you and posterity, just to see how the Western Herald has developed over time, especially as we move into the new student center. People can kind of get a feel for what office we had before. So thank you so much for coming and speaking to us, and if you all would like to donate to the Western Herald to help us continue to serve the students of Western Michigan University and the Kalamazoo community, then just click on our donation link below and check out how we're doing with the College Media Madness fundraiser. Okay. Thanks for tuning in, guys. See you later.